There were 1,000 people in the hall, and I said, my name is Chris Smith. I'm the Labour MP for Islington South and Finsbury, and I'm gay.
A group of us in the Gay Liberation Front hit on the idea of holding a gay pride march to challenge that shameful view.
Equality, and for some people in Stonewall, like me, equality was kind of like what you got to as a starting point.
Welcome to The View From Here, the podcast that explores the lives of key people in the LGBTQ+ movement. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Today we're joined by Jill Nalder, a tireless HIV/AIDS activist and theatre performer whose real-life story inspired the TV programme It's a Sin.
Today's episode explores themes of crisis, compassion and community. Jill tells us about her childhood in Wales, her time at drama school in London, surrounded by gay friends, and the emerging tragedy as the HIV crisis unfolded around her.
This is an adult podcast exploring an often difficult period of LGBTQ+ history. And as such, the series contains discussions of suicide, conversion therapy, homophobia, transphobia, drug use, strong language, and graphic sexual descriptions. It also has a lot of joy and laughs along the way.
We are thrilled today to have Jill Nalder, who's an incredible activist, I think almost a hero of the movement, and we're absolutely delighted to be speaking with you today. We're going to kind of go through your life, but also your activism and the experience that you've had and the contribution that you've made, which, and we're going to talk about this later, led to you recently getting an OBE as well. So you're just an incredible human, and we're so grateful to have you here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here after that enormously huge introduction. Yes, I'm very happy to be here.
So you grew up in Neath in Wales, and you talk about a small town upbringing with open-minded parents.
Yes.
How important was, or how was that a juxtaposition? How did that play?
Do you know, I think that anybody who's lucky enough to have parents that are quite liberal and open and accepting, that's the thing about my mum and dad. They were very accepting of my friends and of my life and my choices, which, although, you know, when you choose something like acting and the theatre, that can cause a lot of issues at home because people want you to, you know, maybe get all your qualifications, go to university, do all that sort of thing. And my parents did want that. And they wanted me to get my education. But once I did to my A levels, they were very liberal in supporting me with what I wanted to do. So I felt very lucky about that, you know, and they were very accepting. They were a bit older, my parents, when I was born, than sort of, I mean, you're talking in the 60s. So my mum was 37 when she had me, and I was her first baby. So that's quite old as far as, you know, it's almost normal now. But back in the 60s, she was an older mum.
Right.
So I think she'd had a lot of life experience, and so had my dad before they had children. So I think that may go towards being more liberal.
I mean, I think one of the reasons why you've just had an OBE is that you've just been this staunch ally and advocate for our community for your whole life.
Well, I got to say, the OBE was on the back of many people. You know, I was honoured enough to get it, but there's a lot of people behind all the things that we do, the charity, the fundraising, the activism. I was very lucky to get it, let's be fair. There's a lot of people doing the groundwork as well. So.
Many shoulders. But
many shoulders. That's the right expression.
I wonder if you can think back to a time in Neath where you think, actually, that's the first time I met a gay person.
I can completely, because I was in the theatre as a child and I met some people from the cast of a show, Godspell. I went to see Godspell when I was in school, and I loved it so much. I went to see it like the whole week at Swansea Grand Theatre. And on the back of seeing that, I wanted to do everything that was involved with drama. So at about 14 years old, I became aware. I heard people talking and saying, you know, about being gay. And I hadn't really understood it, and perhaps didn't fully understand it then. But it became a very new thing in my world. I didn't really understand it. And I thought it was all amazing and exotic. And, you know, it was something so different from Doravale Comprehensive School. So It was like there was it was part of theatre, it seemed to me.
And people were talking about, I guess, being gay, not in a negative way, which presumably is how you heard.
They were just talking about so and so had a boyfriend, and I mean, that was when they were talking about a man, and so that was a new thing to me. And I thought, I kind of liked anything that was a bit out there. You know, it was exciting to me not to be part of a. I thought it was more than a small town existence, although it isn't. It's a perfectly normal part of life. But when you're brought up one way and you only really see certain aspects of life, then it becomes something very exciting to me. The whole theatre, the whole acting, the whole different kinds of worlds that people were living in.
And that was the incredible safe space you had at West Glamorgan Youth Theatre.
Yeah, so that came slightly after my experience of going to Swansea Grand Theatre, and then I joined the Youth Theatre, and then, you know, there weren't men, there were boys, they were all gay boys, not all, a community of gay boys that were dancers and actors, and it was a very safe space. Somehow we were lucky, I say we, including myself, because I had all the fun and the joy of it. But the boys were lucky because they had somewhere where they could truly express themselves and make very good friends as young teenagers. And I think that gave a lot of those boys, I know it did, give them a friendship group that was a cushion to the outside world where most people didn't actually come out so readily to their parents.
What made it such a sort of open, safe space?
I have no idea how it...
We need more of it.
Yeah.
That was the secret. I absolutely have no idea how it put the people together that it did. But the people that auditioned us initially and put us into... We had a very good head of drama for the county, a guy by the name of Godfrey Evans, to which we all owe a great debt, you know, just putting people together. He must have had a knack and an eye for seeing the people that had the talent. I'm talking about the boys now. And sometimes, you know, when you're doing things in a school or you're taking people from schools, you also know people who are having difficulties unbeknown to the children around you. Children that might be struggling at home, struggling with self-expression, things like that. So I think they had an eye for that as well. And when talent was there and they could express themselves through drama, they created a safe space. And if you can't create a safe space through drama, which I will say they're cutting all over the country, you know, if you can't create a safe space through drama, where can you? Because that is a primary form of self-expression.
And requires empathy.
And requires a mixture of all kinds of things, but you can feel free within a scene to express yourself, or write something to express yourself, or improvise. And all the time you're growing and finding out who you are, and the boys were finding out who they were. And I think that's primarily why it was safe.
And so you made a journey that actually lots of young gay men make. You moved from Wales to come to London, to come to the big city.
Yes.
And, you know, while it may not always be London, often gay men will move from the provinces to the city.
Yes.
What was it like? Tell us, you arrived in Paddington, presumably, and...
Joyous. I mean, I arrived in a car. My parents brought me. Because I didn't want to bring all my stuff. But I came up for my audition on the train for my drama school, which was Mountview, which was where I trained. And so I loved the idea of London anyway. I love it. I still love it. I still live here. I think it's a great city. And all that was very exciting. And I met people, you know, again, it opens your world. Again, I mean, our youth theatre, which you feel like a safe space. Drama school is more competitive. There's more pressure out there within drama schools to succeed because, you know, they're training you for the theatre. But London it seemed to be the place to be. It is the place to be.
Yeah, it's the centre of the universe in many respects.
In many ways, it's the best city, you know.
Yeah. And that's when not long after that, you moved into the Pink Palace.
That's correct.
Tell us
so the Pink Palace was a joy because we had some very dodgy accommodation when you were looking for your digs, or what you might call somewhere to live as a student, you know, student digs. Because when we came to drama school, you didn't have halls of residence or anything like that you might get in a university. There was no cushion for you. you just had to find somewhere to live and get on with it. Get yourself to the, where you were called in the morning to come to classes or whatever. You were responsible entirely for yourself, which I think looking back is quite hard now when I think of myself. I was only 18. So, I think when you go to university that you're looked after a lot. But we could have been anywhere and anything. And people that in my drama college, they had spent nights in hostels and, everyone was just on their own. So eventually, we found some very weird accommodations and not very nice. And then Jay, my closest friend in the world, he found an advert saying accommodation, in the Ham and High, which is the Hampstead and Highgate Gazette. This apartment that was available, £80 a week, 4 people. That's so cheap, it's unbelievable. Even then, it was quite cheap.
These days, it seems
outrageously. Oh my word, it's so cheap. And so we thought it wasn't going to be up to much, but we'll have a look anyway because it was so reasonable. And then it was fantastic. It was so glorious. It was so funny because it was so pink, with pink carpets, dark pink carpets, darkish pink curtains, pink furniture, chandeliers. It was the most extraordinary place. Looked sort of the inside of a very glamorous restaurant. And so we were laughing. Of course, it was camp.
Yeah.
It was funny. We couldn't believe it. And so we were just calling it, oh my gosh, like a palace. And then it became the Pink Palace. It had no other possible title. And Russell loved it. Russell came there, Russell Davis, who subsequently wrote It's a Sin and sort of gave the Pink Palace a place in history.
Yeah.
Because he put it there and people kind of loved the name, but we did. And everybody would go, oh, come round to the Pink Palace and have lunch or have supper or come to a party at the Pink Palace. And that was how it transpired. But it's just genuinely because it was pink. Properly pink.
The parties just sound legendary. The neighbours must have hated you, but the party sounded incredible.
Well, I don't know, that they seem to have very thick walls and a very high tolerance. So we didn't have any true complaints from anybody. And upstairs, above us, was a band who had a chart hit, who were rehearsing. We could hear them rehearsing, not even very loudly, through the floor. And so we were there, they were above us, and it seemed to go along very harmoniously. So
I sometimes feel that these happenstance events, these places, these gatherings are harder and harder and harder to find now because things are now. I mean, you'd never find anything for £8 a week that wasn't a cardboard box or a bridge.
No.
And the Pink, as James said, the Pink Palace became famous through Russell T Davies. It's a Sin. You've written the most beautiful memoir, Love from the Pink Palace. When did Russell approach you for the first time and say, hey, I've got this idea?
So that's quite interesting because, of course, that goes back in my memories. I'm not 100% sure when the actual time that he decided, but before lockdown, and he was talking about what he wanted to do was write about the boys. He thought it was time to write about the boys, time to tell their story. That's what he wanted to do. And it grew and grew and became something very different. No, it didn't become different. It still became about the boys. But then, of course, it sort of involved me more than I thought it was going to. I mean, let's be fair, I had a big shock when suddenly it was mentioned on the television, So, and then once they said Jill is a real person, that's when I sort of led into a very different part of my life, really.
Because your character is central to which is right. That's how it should be portrayed.
It's amazing how it happened. But I think he wanted to tell the story of a group of friends because friends were family, and that's what we all became. Because blood family sometimes were very distant or feared because of the stigma. And so we were a family of ourselves, really, different forms, which very often happens. I mean, I don't think we were hugely unusual. I think that was happening, still happens for various reasons, around the world, things that people go through, places that you're put, and that time and space, all of us in London, all of us young, became a little, well, the family is the best word for it, it was
the chosen family.
The chosen family, yeah.
And that's very much how you write it in the book as well. It's a love story, a story of family, a story of...
Yeah, that's nice you say that. It's very nice you say that because that's what it felt like. It felt like we were fighting the world out there in a way, and they were fighting differently from me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fighting on behalf of people that I loved, but they, of course, are fighting for their lives. I'm fighting not to be stigmatised, and their journey is far, far harder.
Yeah.
And that's why Russell wanted to tell their story, you know.
So let's move to the world out there. When was the first time that you heard whispers of this disease affecting gay men?
Well, yes. I mean, those things they dribble through your consciousness. Do you know what I mean? You don't really clock it. I saw this little article in Pineapple, the dance place. I'd gone for a class, an exercise class, and there was a newspaper in the cafe, and I was just picking it up and reading it. And there was a small article in that about a gay flu, which said that some, gay men had got this illness, which was like a flu-like illness. That's what it was written as, which I can only think was symptomatic of, the infection at the time, but not the actual. It was not called HIV or AIDS. No. It was just called this illness. And then I clocked it and thought, that's a very weird way to write about an illness, gay flu, I think it said in inverted commas. And then I heard some people making some horrible comments about gay men in a wine bar in, I think it was Mayfair area, while I was doing something or seeing someone doing a cabaret. And I heard some very nasty comments about some people who've been in America and said gay men were spreading a disease. Something like that comments. It is a gradual drip feed, really, before you started seeing that people in America, that knew people who knew people, someone had actually died. And then it became more and more, oh my goodness, what is it? And then rumours started. So I'd say from the early 80s to the mid 80s, it became something really fearful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then it began, and I can't say off the top of my head now, the date that I noticed that it was, it became HIV AIDS, because it was linked to a virus, then it was linked to how was it spread, then it was linked to certain behaviours, and then it was finally linked to blood, just into your bloodstream in some way. And eventually it was linked to, drug users, blood transfusions, various forms of sexual behaviour, all that kind of thing. So it grew and grew and grew. If you think of COVID, I mean, we had much more information available. So COVID, we knew quicker what was going on, and obviously with much more tolerance. But it was a slower feed with HIV. You couldn't find out information.
Is that because the government thought it's a gay disease we don't need to worry about?
I'm sure that there was something of that. I'm quite sure that initially that's part and parcel of it's segregated to gay men, IV drug users, in Haiti, communities where people are not given the same depth of care.
Yeah.
And horribly so, but I think that was the truth at the time. Sex workers, so it becomes like a subculture. And people are being, blamed instead of cared for, and the blame was the thing that really, I think, I imagine if you are an IV drug user, you're already feeling pretty battered by society in a way, and then gay men adding to that, and then sex workers, everybody that already might have felt bad about something in their life. And I'm not saying they should have or anything like that. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that all
by society.
Trampled down. That's a great way of putting it. But I'm not saying that all sex workers. Some, people have choices, but still, there is a stigma to all of those things.
In those early days, it was the 4 H's. So homosexuals, hemophiliacs, heroin users, and Haitians.
Yes.
And it was when it kind of came into Haitians that everyone was like, hold on, this seems to not be fitting our.
You know what I mean? It was so strange the way that evolved.
Yeah.
And so it became. There was an innocent group of people that caught it, passed it on, or whatever, that was seen as unfortunate, innocent victims, and people who seemed you're the people to blame. And that's really, I mean, it's a virus at the end of the day, and it's indiscriminate.
Right.
And so instead of, which you would always feel like those groups that were much more affected in the early days, instead of seeing them as a beacon of hope and caring for them and preparing where this could go, they were stigmatized and blamed.
And was there a sense of incredulity that this could only be a virus that somehow attacks very unique, specific sections of the population?
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, how can that be? And if you're not medically trained in any way, then you can't even understand that initially.
Well, because our medical understanding now is obviously better, but we still had very good medical understanding then. It wasn't like we were at the beginning times of understanding medicine.
No, but I think it's when any new illness is out there, or any new disease or virus or bacteria, then medical science will always just look for the truth. Yeah. Science is always just researching. So, and they have to go through those processes of how is this happening? What is this? Because I heard a very interesting piece of television, it was, where the woman I believe it was a woman who flagged up the fact that she was in control of a drug called Septrin, and the drug was used to treat various forms of pneumocystis pneumonia, and that was unusual. It was I think you had to, ask for the drug. It had to be whatever channels they went through in the States. They had to be, get hold of the drug, because it wasn't common everywhere all the time. Certainly pneumocystis wasn't. So and it was her, I think her story is quite incredible, because she heard that she flagged it up for a 21-year-old man in San Francisco, and she noted that was unusual. Well, within a few weeks, of course, she'd had that about 3 or 4 times. So she flagged up the unusual thing that was happening. And then that became known to science, to medicine, because it has to start somewhere. You have to notice that something is out of the norm to flag up that, why is this going on? And then it transpired that these were gay men, and then the rumours began. But she did a good thing. She was flagging up, there's something going on health-wise here. And so she was doing and I thought that was quite fascinating.
And when was the first time it came crashing into your world? Your immediate world?
When did it hit the pig palace?
Yeah, well, that was in drama school, really. That was when I was in drama school. So you're talking, it was towards the end of our time, so early 80s, when one of our boys, not one of my closest friends, but one of the boys that I was in a group with in drama school, got sick. And then, of course, he was, again, quite secretive. So we only heard rumours. And we had been in America. We had done a tour in America. So there was always this thing about the danger of Americans, because Americans, I know, it is crazy. But it was said, it's all right to go and maybe meet up with someone for a fun night out, but careful if it's an American, because, there seemed to be another stigma that poor America were getting,
But the virus, I suppose, was in circulation more in the US than it hadn't come across.
And certainly San Francisco, and certainly in New York City, where like London, things. It was far more prevalent in London than it was in, Llanfairpwll Gwyngyll. But it's so that was my first real encounter. It was one of our friends, and he didn't live very long. He died very, very quickly, and within my own group of my people that I loved and were my close family friends, it was the mid-80s when my friend Juan, this makes me sad now, when my friend Juan phoned me to tell me that he was positive, and he had had an illness. He had something that we call now a seroconversion, and he had that, and he'd fallen very sick for a couple of weeks. Didn't know why. And then subsequently, I probably think about 9 months later, he was then diagnosed. So he put it on the back burner, because you could have this infection. Your immune system made a very dramatic response, but you could then feel well for quite a while before the gradual deterioration of your immune system. It's a very complicated disease of which I'm not medical, but I grew to have an understanding of.
Yeah. And part of the challenge was testing.
Part of the challenge was testing. I mean, there was no same-day testing. There was nothing like that. You could go and get tested. Then you'd wait weeks and weeks and weeks, up to 6 weeks for a result. You could spread it in that time.
Yeah, of course.
If you didn't have any protection, people were not even thinking of protected sex. So you didn't know whether you were positive, or all those people that it's a promiscuous world. It's young men out there looking for sex. People have sex, they have fun. So that's the way it goes. In that 6 weeks, you can have quite a few encounters. You can spread it.
Yeah.
You can, catch it from somebody who doesn't know they've got it. So it's a conundrum. It was a real fear and a whole, cauldron of confusion and fear.
And then in terms of the availability of testing, and something that I don't really understand is how the testing system got off the ground in the first place. And, because there was obviously a very slow response from governments across the world.
Yes.
But then at some point, testing became something you could get, albeit long wait times and presumably a lot of stigma for getting a test in the first place.
I think what happened initially was you had to look for antibodies in the blood. You could not just say you had, because now they can DNA test the viral particles, and they can do the like people were testing for the virus with COVID. But they couldn't do that initially. They didn't have the PCR tests and things like that to work on it, to know quick enough. So they had to wait for you as a sick person to produce enough antibodies to be measured in the blood. So day 2 after your initial infection, you don't have that. So that's why people didn't know for many weeks. So then they go to be tested, then it'd have to get sent away. And I don't know where everything went. And then you could pay eventually for a same day testing, which is much like private healthcare. You can go to a clinic, and by the end of the day, they could tell you if you had any antibodies to HIV, but they still couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
It's still not telling you about the viral part.
And that's still some time after exposure.
Yeah.
And you talk about your friend Jade did that. He paid for the same day results.
I have no idea, but we went to a clinic somewhere in Regent's Park. It must be near Harley Street or something, but they said they were doing same day testing. You'd get information out of the small amount of gay press that was around, or the helplines, gay switchboard and that sort of thing. Anyway, I don't know how we found out about it, but the same day clinic.
You're right about how nerve-wracking that was.
It is nerve-wracking, and it is now when you think of anything. As you get older, you become more aware that you might have to have a test for this and a test for that. Yes. And you know what that is with health. Anyone who's waited for horrible news, waiting for that, that's what it was like. It was ultra horrible news, because if you were told, then it was a death sentence. So sometimes when you are going for today's horrible news, you might have something, but it might not be a death sentence. It might be something, yes, life-limiting, but not necessarily. So you're going to have news, bad news, worse news. But there was no doubt that it was a death sentence. And there was all that went with it. I've got to tell my family. I've got to, And we were in our early 20s.
And these were people who had to tell their family, who maybe hadn't even come out to their family.
Hadn't come out. I mean, I don't think at that point any of my friendship group had come out to their family. Maybe to their siblings, but certainly not to their parents. That went on a long time before people came out to their parents.
And he used the phrase "going home,"
which Russell used that in "It's a Sin," and that was a phrase, and it wasn't given the same context as you give it now, because you now see it with hindsight of that phrase. But people have gone home. Oh, he's gone home. You didn't know if they were sick. You didn't know if you'd see them again. There was another boy in the cast of West Side Story who also disappeared, and you think, where is he? He hasn't come, not from the cast. The show had closed, but he used to come into the piano bar or to Madame Jojo's, and okay, where is he? He's not here. Oh, he's gone home. He's living in Canada. Oh, okay, that's So again, it was a mystery. Everything was shrouded in. Oh, I don't know what would be a bad enough word in my heart to describe it. It was almost like an isolation, but it stigmatized isolation. Do you know what I mean?
I find that expression "going home" very poignant.
Yes,
because it's horrible, but what it also presupposes is that there was a home to go to.
Well, yes.
So full disclosure, Jill and I know each other a little bit. So I'm Jamaican, and I grew up in Jamaica. And I was extremely lucky with the family that I had. I could say, I'm going home. But people ask me that question, oh, when are you going home? And they mean Jamaica.
Yes.
And I say that is the question of someone whose home still wants them.
Yes.
So Jamaica is still a society where it's still illegal to be gay.
Gosh.
And it's challenging to be publicly gay in Jamaica. More than challenging. That's a
Yes,
ridiculous
yes,
euphemism.
yes.
So home is for me here.
Yes.
I am Jamaican and I have Jamaican history, but home is here
London.
because it's where I was able to be who I am. And I think one of the remarkable things about the story that you share is that you provided a home for all these people.
We're all going to get emotional.
Do you recognize that?
Well, it's the first time that's been said, and it's so interesting to hear you say it when you come from somewhere that you can't be yourself 100%. And it's very interesting because when we use that phrase, going home, and Russell used it in It's a Sin, it was going home to hide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going home because the families very often felt shame and they didn't want that known. So they were not going home to the comfort. Sometimes, of course, people were. Sometimes people were, but many times people were going home to be hidden away, to be put in the back room, and because people couldn't cope with it, and they didn't want friends and neighbours and that knowing that somebody had AIDS, because it was called AIDS then. Now we say HIV, you say HIV positive, and that the words HIV positive and combination therapy and everything inspires the idea that you have a manageable condition, which it is. Then AIDS was the word that meant hide away. Mm-hmm. And so they went home with a cloud over them. They didn't go home to be treated, of course, lovingly by parents that were tolerant, of course, but maybe very often pretend they've got cancer, don't say anything, all of that kind of thing, because a lot of people pretended they had cancer.
And that stigma, of course, was partly created by the government at the time with the adverts.
Yes, I mean, and I think everything was sometimes done with an intention that wasn't bad, but then it got twisted by everything because instead of that horrible ad campaign that I've talked about where it says, don't die of ignorance, that it wasn't done. It was done to create people's fear, to make them, look after themselves, to be careful, to not catch it if they didn't need to. But what it did was made people more frightened of gay men. That's why it became more stigmatized for gay men, because all of a sudden they were getting the blame anyway. Then you get this huge tombstone with the voice of John Hurt and, don't die of ignorance. It was like a bit of a advert for a horror film.
And you provided that home for, I guess, home in the sense of loving embrace for a lot of people.
Well, I'd like to think that, but the gay community as well, the gay community did not sit still. No. I mean, the gay community stepped up to this. And I don't think
about what that looked like.
Well, it properly looked like we are not going to sit down and take this, and I've said this before, and I know that this, what we're talking about particularly is LGBTQ plus history. But I don't think that everything would be where it is today in terms of the treatments for HIV, for the way that it's dealt with in hospitals, for the way that funerals are even today when they're celebrations of lives. I went so recently, the day before yesterday, to David Raven's funeral in London, a gay icon, and it was an absolute celebration. And that's the whole influence of the gay community on HIV and AIDS stepped up and changed a lot of things. The way people were treated in hospital as a holistic, because the doctors and nurses involved in it were the people that had a liberal mind, that they wanted to be out there. So the whole thing came together because, certainly I believe in London, because of the gay community. And that's the whole gay community, gay men and lesbian and trans and everybody who is part and parcel of that community. There were help groups, there was advice, there was information at the hospitals, there was information about safe sex, there was information about speaking about sex the way it was, no euphemisms, you know, because gay men were used to saying it as it is in a way, you know, and making clear what you had to do. Use a condom, what sort of sex you were having, what was high risk, all knowledge that was coming out at the time. But it was made as plain and simple as it could be for people to help themselves when outside of that people were not helping.
But you didn't stand still either.
I tried not to.
Because you were really the driving force behind West End Cares.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear that story. And I'd particularly share it in Love from the Pink Press. But I'd love to hear about that first show and how you got it up and all of the people and all of that.
Honestly, it was an amazing thing. It was an amazing thing to be part of. And I think people that, because it carried on for many years, West End Cares, and then it became Theatre Mad. But initially, it was set up purely by a small group of us at Les Miserables. Me, Anthony Lynn, Sean Kerrison, Jay Alexander, who was also at Crazy for You, Dursley McClendon, who was HIV positive and actually had AIDS, so he was sick, but he was in Phantom of the Opera. But we made a committee in Les Miserables, and to cut a long story short, we had a meeting on a Saturday morning before the matinee. And we're going to plan regular meetings to see how we could fundraise. And the idea was that we would fundraise based on a Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS idea, because they were a step ahead of us in a number of cases, a number of people that had died. They were devastated on Broadway by the number of young gay men and older gay men that had died or were dying. And so we were following very quickly on the heels of this. And we did. Do you know what? When you're stuck and you think, I can't do anything, then you find some way, make yourself feel better to get something happening. And it gave us great energy. Plus we were young. Plus we were in the West End. It was a massive community. Still is a massive community. And we actually walked the streets to find a venue that would be happy to put on a late night show. And we found Smith's in Covent Garden, which is now a clothes shop, I think, on the corner of Longacre. And we found that was a restaurant with a downstairs. They were very helpful. I mean, we overran that place with ideas and stage and lightings and everything was coming in, you know, and had to be got together very quickly after a show. To once we had the idea, anyone could do anything they liked. It was party pieces. Initially, it was ideas from shows, what we might do as a cabaret, and Les Miserables put together the very first cabaret. And we took it very seriously. So we had some items that were very moving. I mean, we were in the show that was so, you know, anthemic anyway. So it's all singing. It was singing or pieces of poetry or readings or things. And anyway, we put together a cabaret. And it was the first one. So, and of course, we were the longest running show in time length of the show. I mean, it's a long show. So
it's a long old show.
It's long and long and long. We didn't come down till 10 to 11. Ooh. 10 to 11. So we had to we wanted to go up at 11:30, 11:45. Otherwise, people aren't going to hang around the West End all night waiting for the show. So we had everything geared up to go. And Bob West, our company manager, or West End company manager, had all the technical side ready to go. And we went in there to set up. We'd done a sound check earlier in the day, in the morning before the matinee. Raced down to there. And we were literally running. We were truly running.
Matinee, a main show, and then
a late night cabaret. And that's how it went. Yeah. Or for the rehearsal day. But on the Monday, we'd only done the main show. Yeah, but when we did the meetings, then we had the matinees. We did them on all different days, but we decided that we would do a month of Monday night cabarets. And that seemed to be the best way to do it. That was the night that Smith's restaurant could accommodate us. We'd see how the first 4 went. Then we'd have a month off. Then we'd try and do another 4. Mm-hmm. And that's how we did it. And we moved from Smith's, and when they got fed up of us, we moved to Centre Stage, and we moved to the Connaught Rooms. We found various places, and we did late night cabarets, and then actual shows would put on a late night performance, and we took the takings from that with the managements of the shows. So we had, and I've said this before, but we have an inbuilt source of people paying money to be entertained. in West End shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all there. So, and people in long runs, they like to do something different.
Yeah.
They like to feel they were helping. Most people wanted to help.
And most people have been affected in some way. I
At
guess.
that point, it looked terrifying.
Yeah.
So people were absolutely scared of losing their friends or their families. It was certainly within our community. Later on, it became a little bit more, shall we make this a bit more communal and raise money for other things as well? Because not everyone's affected by HIV and AIDS. And initially, if people asked us that, we would say, well, that's absolutely fine. We will support you if you want to do something for another charity. Of course we will. But we are fundraising for this.
Yes.
But later on, of course, we diversified.
And was it fundraising? What were you? I guess what were you fundraising for? But also, was it activism? Obviously, it was activism. But were you aiming to get policy change?
It's a good idea. It's a good question you've asked me, because we were fundraising for not the Terence Higgins Trust, but Crusade.
Right.
And Crusade ran the hardship fund, where the money went directly to people struggling with HIV and AIDS and into research. So that's where we decided, because Crusade had done an event, a one-off event under a title West End Cares. So we rang them to ask if we could use it and take it forward. And they were quite thrilled with that. So what we did was we physically raised the money and we handed it over to Crusade, very often in buckets of cash. I mean, kid you not, because there was nothing so sophisticated as there is now. And when I was doing Oliver in the West End, we did a bucket collection. That's the other thing we would do. We would announce at the end of the show, and we would do a bucket collection. And in that show was Jim Dale, who some people will remember from the old Carry On films. And he was a great performer, singer, song and dance man. Still is a good performer, but he had a very sad story of losing his daughter from leukemia. And so we said, with our bucket collection, Palladium Theatre, it's a big theatre, we'll go 50-50 if you're willing to do the curtain speech, and we can do 50-50 for leukemia, HIV and AIDS. And he did a beautiful speech every day for, I think it was a week or maybe 2 weeks. We raised a lot of money, bucket collection, and we counted every penny of that in dressing room E, and we split it, and we carried all the money in buckets round the corner to the bank and banked it in the bank. Truly. And we would come between shows with another load of money to bank in the bank. Oh my God, the bank could see us coming. They were going, no. And then eventually Crusade got some counting machines, and we could do the bucket collection, collect them all the money in cars, go round and put it through the counting machines. But we didn't have that then. We just had teams of people actually counting. And after our cabarets, that was brilliant, because it was so grassroots, it was so like a village hall kind of feel, because they would phone up to Les Mis, phone up the stage door, say, can I have 2 tickets for the cabaret? We had a seating plan, ticking them off. So you got this number of people in. That table's sold out, keep this table. Yeah. Somebody saw a man with grey hair and a beard at the door of our first cabaret, went, oh my God, it's Stephen Sondheim. And no, we haven't got Stephen Sondheim at table. So we were going, oh God, somebody get it wasn't Stephen Sondheim at all. Somebody oh my God, somebody give Stephen Sondheim a seat.
And this feels like, raising all this cash, getting, I guess, normal theatre goers, people that weren't in the LGBTQ community, people that weren't feeling directly affected. Yes. How did that change? Because, from being very isolated, feeling that this is a very isolating condition, that society has isolated this community, to then getting a broader community of people to support. How did that change your mindset and say, yeah, we're doing something?
Well, as soon as you start putting money in the bank, you feel like you're doing something. Because we used to have this Crusade account, which I can't remember which bank it was in now, but we used to walk between shows, and you certainly feel a sense of achievement once you start putting some money in. Yeah. And once the money started to get a lot bigger, like through things like that. But you could also have people initially could be quite affronted by the fact that we were raising for HIV and AIDS. Right. So you would find you might do better if you were doing children in need for a bucket collection. The amount of money you might raise for children in need. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Cool. But that was something that would grip the whole nation. Whereas you'd have certain sections of society who certainly wouldn't put money in the bucket for AIDS. Right. So you did have that. Nevertheless, you've got an audience of thousands of people sometimes. And so you're going to get some money.
Yeah.
You're not going to find that everybody. And when you have somebody like Jim Dale, for instance, doing a beautiful speech about his own charity as well, sometimes that, made people think, okay, I guess you think it's one disease, it's another disease. The human feeling behind that is the same.
And thinking about Les Mis for a second, because you mentioned it being anthemic. Empty chairs at empty tables, very much adopted by the LGBT community in the kind of 80s and 90s as a symbol of that crisis. Is that something you were aware of, being in the show at that time?
Oh, I think so. I think you can't avoid all those tragedies, and beautiful lyrics. And I mean, they became obvious, God on high, all those things, and Bring Him Home, all our beautiful songs. And The Kiss of the Spider Woman was up the road, and they had Tomorrow Would Be Free.
Yeah.
If not tomorrow, then the day after that. And Liza Minnelli sang that for the Gay Men's Chorus in the States, and that became an anthem over there. So there was a lot of that, using the music and using it. I don't have to say if that's the first time all that was done, but I think it probably was, And when my friend Juan died in Paris, the French cast of Les Miserables sang Hear the People Sing at His Funeral. And so they became like those celebrations of life with amazing music and all of that.
And you spent quite a bit of time in Paris with Juan.
I tried to, yeah, definitely. Tried to.
That gave you almost a unique perspective of how other countries were looking at HIV.
Yeah, well, he came back and forth to London quite a bit because, and nothing wrong with the medical treatment in Paris, nothing wrong. But the centre, it seemed like the centre of the inspiration of the gay community was much stronger in London.
Okay.
And that may be because it hadn't quite, because London, the theatre community was following San Francisco and New York with a number of infections.
Right.
And Paris would not have had so many infections. So not so much new information. And so it's a different country with a different community. Because the big theatre communities, we have these big theatre communities in New York and London. And they're not really the same in other countries. Of course, they've got theatre and talent and art in abundance, but we have this kind of commercial theatre that happens in New York and London, and it was big.
Yeah. So
you had a lot of people affected, and that's the nub of it, really.
And we should briefly talk about David Raven, whose funeral is that. And for anyone who may not know, David Raven's drag personality was Maisie Trollet. And I think Maisie Trollet was the oldest working drag queen.
He was.
Up until...
Well, he was 90
years ago.
Well, even the last time he sang was on his 90th birthday celebration at the Dome in Brighton, and he did an amazing job of sitting on a high chair and singing If I Never Sing Another Song, and really very emotional for the audience and amazing. So he was, until he died last week, or the week before last, the funeral was this week, he was the oldest working drag queen in the world. There was an American guy they did this Netflix series.
I saw that.
But I can't remember his drag name, that guy, but he passed away a while back, leaving David Raven, who would always be David Raven, the man, and Maisie Trollet, the drag artist.
Yes. But and you never crossed the gender.
You never crossed the two. No. Yeah. He would go, who? If you called him Maisie and he was dressed in his ordinary clothes, he would no. So, big friend of mine, beautiful man.
Sat at the table at the Pink Palace.
Quite a few times. He was around. He was anything if not supportive to everybody. And he was a brilliant, brilliant performer in his own right. And the iconic thing about David was that he became a drag artiste through the 60s. It was all undercover, He was stigmatised simply for being a gay man. Yeah. And he had to keep that in his own world. And so he's grown up with all of that. He's never been anything but himself. He's always been himself. He knew himself as he discovered himself. Obviously, he didn't know from little boy, but he knew who he was, who he wanted to be. And he lived his life properly trailblazing. And I'm very honoured to have known him. He was an amazing person and a huge supporter, a lover of the theatre a lover of people around him. Goodness knows what Brighton will do without him, because he was a centre of a community in Brighton, which is a great community, a great gay community, but it's sadly missing David Raven.
In the opening to Love from the Pink Palace, Russell T Davies calls you a hero. Do you recognise that in yourself?
No, I don't. Russell loves me. I know he loves me. I love him. But listen, there's all sorts of people doing heroic things. I mean, what is it? I don't know. I don't recognise that in myself. No, I to recognise it in other people that I see going, in war zones, and that kind of thing, which creates terror in you on a daily basis. I mean, we did. We took it as it was our life. We had to do something with the way our life was. And I'm honoured that somebody like Russell even says lovely things about me, which I know he does. And but there's a lot of people out there doing stuff, and I'm one of. I've been given this platform, which is amazing, and that's an honour. And I try to do this, and that's why I wanted to speak with you guys. You guys are great, and you're trying to do this project, which is amazing. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. It's a great thing, and people should know their history. They should know what's gone on. And a few things that I've done in similar veins, not quite the same as yours, but there are people now in the gay community being aware that, things will go missing. Mm-hmm. And there's a lady up in Scotland who was collecting work by gay people that work that has been written under pseudonyms.
Yes.
People not admitting they were gay. Lavender Menace.
Yes.
It's just come to me. And that's an amazing work as well, trying to make sure the written work, is this written by a gay person? Is this meant to be a gay relationship? Veiled, So there's a lot of stuff out there. And it's a great time to be finding that history.
And that's why we're so motivated to do this podcast, because we all need to learn from history.
Yes. No, do we ever?
Well, this is the thing. And so, there are plenty of LGBTQ people now in positions of authority, responsibility, decision making that didn't live through the AIDS crisis, that didn't experience this discrimination, that have grown up in a world, in many respects, extremely privileged to have grown up in a world based on the activism of people like you and others that have made our lives infinitely better. But it's very easy to forget that happened. And so what is your message for the next generation, for people growing up now, about where society goes and how we can shape change?
Well, I think everybody wants their own chance in life, don't they? I mean, if I have a message, it would be to take time to think where we stand. I mean, I take time to think, not about where we stand on where the gay communities come, because that's for the next generation to think where they are. But I think our parents, we've lived without a war. Yeah. We've lived without war on our shores. I mean, there's people who've changed the world in every direction. I'm a woman on the shoulders of people who've allowed me to have a vote. Yes. So it's take time out to learn, because you'll find something interesting. Time to think where we are today because of people that came before us, because we all carry that with us in every shape or form. So, try not to forget, I would say.
Yeah.
Because life is short. Try and make a difference. Try and let everybody have their life, and for goodness sake, stop trying to stop people being themselves.
Do you think, seeing what's happening in America at the moment with the US administration and elsewhere, do you think there's a huge danger that we're going to go backwards quite a long way? And what do we need to do about it?
Do we have another 3 hours? I mean, how do we even know where this is, how do we even know where this is going? This is, we live in scary times, because I don't think we quite know where we're going. And I feel like, again, people are being prevented from being themselves, and it's gradually coming around to think, okay, people haven't maybe lived through this. What I hate is when you see people who haven't lived through various experiences, war being a big one, then joining on to maybe, doing the salutes, the I don't know even if I can say it, but the Nazi salutes and all that kind of thing, and not having any idea maybe what that felt like, and wanting to make a point, but riding on the back of such pain that has been caused for people, that I think if we could only look at the things that why should we try to cause pain for people? That's what I really don't understand.
Yeah.
Because what people decide to do, have your left-wing or right-wing views, that's fine. You can have your views. But when you're actively causing other people to not able to live their life, why would you do that? Why would that be a good idea?
And it feels like that's one of the key lessons of the decades that you've lived through is don't forget your activism, don't forget where you came from, don't forget that rights can move forwards and backwards, and we've got to keep that pressure.
Why can't we just try to make people's lives easier instead of making them harder? Why should you say you can't do this or you can't do that? Or, so I don't know, so people feel fear, and then it can't be good. It can't be good. You can't achieve your life in its full potential. It's hard enough anyway, isn't it, to find our place, to achieve, to do what we need to do. But if you feel fear, you can't express yourself. If you can't get an education, if you're in certain countries, if you can't even be legal, if you're a gay man in certain countries, you can't even be allowed to study if you're a woman or a young girl in certain countries. How can you have your life to its full potential? And also benefit your community, ultimately the planet, our species, if part of it is not being fulfilled.
Yeah, it's an incredible message, and I have such admiration for your activism, for your heroism, and I know that you were talking earlier that you believe your OBE is lots of people's efforts, and of course that's right, but your efforts, your incredible work, the support, fundraising.
Well, I hope that having had that honour, and it is because of a lot of people as well, but I hope that going forward that will be a good platform for maybe fundraising and doing stuff like that, because it's, having got something like that, I feel like more that I have to, keep earning that.
Oh, it's incredible that you still have that fire.
I tell you what,
in your belly.
My friend sent me congratulations. He went, "Congratulations, Jill Nalder, OBE, old but entertaining."
Jill, thank you so much for coming today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Our absolute honour to have you.
I've enjoyed talking to you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The View from Here. Of course, there's a lot of politics in any movement, but the political views you've heard across the series don't necessarily reflect the views of the podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review, as well as sharing the word on social media. Join us next time for more personal stories from the front lines of LGBTQ+ history.